And here we are for episode 2 of Commander's Squad, and all three of us together, Nick Ashooh, and I am already anticipating what could be a monster test for the Commanders against the Green Bay Packers on Thursday.
I'm David Harrison, and I'll tell you what's a little eerie to me just how similar the Packers and Commanders week ones went. One team is going to have to be the non-Giants part of this game this week.
And I'm Anthony Armstrong, the original 1-3, and this is a matchup that's going to test this Commanders team to see how quickly they can get the ball rolling on offense and get started, because Micah Parsons is going to be hunting for those Packers.
All right, let's look ahead to week 2 at Green Bay right now.
Hail to the Commanders! It's the Commanders Squad. Everything Washington Commanders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of the nation's capital. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Rally the burgundy and gold. The Commanders Squad Show starts now.
Nick Ashooh, David Harrison, Anthony Armstrong. You see David live from the practice field there, which we're going to get a lot of these. And I do want to point out, by the way, that he's talking through his glasses. So if we want to get Ray-Ban to sponsor this show in any way, I think that's a great move. I'll just throw that out there. Now, I love technology, and the fact that you're using that, I think, is great. Look, we're going to look ahead, obviously, to what we've got coming up on Thursday night at Green Bay, a place where the Commanders have not won, no matter what their name has been, since 1988. We know we've got a pass rush and Micah Parsons to look at on Green Bay, but then there's the question on the other side as to whether or not Washington's defense can look again against Green Bay the way that they did against the Giants. Of course, Terry McLaurin is going to be a part of today, Deebo Samuel in that offense, and Jayden Daniels specifically against Micah Parsons. Guys, we're coming off of a win against the Giants with this team. It's a win that matters. You want to start the season off right. But there is no question, Anthony, that this is a game that is a monumental test, primetime, short week, and on top of that, at Green Bay.
If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best, Nick. You have to show up on primetime situations, and it just happens to be that this game is on Amazon Prime. So go get your app, sign up, and download it, because there's going to be some fireworks out there. This team has drawn one of the toughest schedules of the season, and it's early tests right now. I'm glad they're getting this Thursday game out of the way. I'm glad that they're going against Micah Parsons, he hadn't even had 2 weeks of practice yet. He's had success against the Lions, but I think that the Commanders' offensive line, David, has beefed themselves up, and they're going to be prepared, especially what they face week 1 against the Giants.
Yeah, I think when you look back at that Packers-Lions game, you don't want to take anything away from Micah Parsons, right? The consummate pro, super talented athlete, right? I mean, he's in category that people are talking about. Reggie White's the only other one to do what he's done in his NFL career so far. So absolutely don't take anything away from Micah. But the Detroit Lions also had 3 first-game starters, like first-day starting interior offensive linemen going up against him and that Packers defensive front. The Washington Commanders don't have that problem. They've got Tyler Biadasz, who's super experienced, very smart, going to set the protections really well. Nick Allegretti's been around the block a couple times. And Brandon Coleman, young guy, only his second game as an NFL left guard, but certainly has that potential and that ability. And then, of course, you've got Cliff Kingsbury, who knows how to scheme things the right way. So I don't think that the Green Bay Packers, not that it was necessarily easy against the Detroit Lions anyway, but I think it's going to be a little bit harder for Micah and for that Packers front to do exactly what they did against the Detroit Lions. But Nick, man, I went back and watched that Packers game, and I'm like, maybe it's recency bias just coming off of Sunday, but like it looked like the Packers were the Commanders, the Lions were the Giants, the Lions moving the ball a little bit against that Packers defense, but then getting in the red zone and, early field goals, the turnover, just not able to capitalize on those red zone drives. So it really looks like the Packers and Commanders basically did similar things in week 1 against similar performing opponents. The difference here for me is going to be the Washington Commanders did some of those same shoot yourself in the foot things that the Giants and Lions did. If they do that against the Packers team that only committed 4 penalties, I don't think it's going to go as well.
And, this is that time of year where we don't have many, examples of what teams look like, right? You got 1 week, it's a small sample size, but we can only work with what we've seen so far, right? And it's very clear that Green Bay is legit. We know what that pass rush certainly is. We mentioned Micah Parsons. Really only played half of the team snaps defensively, and you expect maybe in a short week it might be similar. Maybe they ramp him up a little bit more. He even said, which I love, by the way, he kind of was just like, dude, they traded me 10 days before the season. I didn't even get a chance to work with these guys. So there's something to be said for maybe not seeing as much Micah Parsons now versus seeing the Packers later in the season. But on the other side, if we're comparing the Packers to where Detroit is, we may end up finding later out, during the season that Detroit's just not as good as what they were in the past. We've seen these coaching staffs flip before. We saw it with Philadelphia years ago when they lost an offensive and defensive coordinator, and they just weren't the same. But we don't know for sure, so we can only judge by what we saw right now. This feels to me on a short week like a lower scoring game, more of a defensive battle, getting after the quarterbacks, given what you said. Very similar, I think, in terms of, both of the way that these teams played in week one, getting after the quarterback, the defense being aggressive. I will say this for anybody that's interested. I love the under in this game. Just saying, it's at 48.5 at FanDuel, just in case you're wondering. But yeah, these short weeks are always difficult. Like, I think we all love football. Everybody loves to watch it, but we know that the product sometimes, even early on in the season, it's tough because you have players not going through a same level of a routine. And of course, I talk about routine. I think, Anthony, you'd know more about routine than any of us when it comes to that. But right, like this is something that we've kind of always seen is these Thursday night games tend to have some hiccups and maybe even slow starts just because of the fact that everybody's kind of out of their routine heading into an early week.
You definitely are out of the routine, Nick. This the fact that you have that short week, so you can't prepare that much. I mean, you think about it when you have short notice and you find out that, hey, everybody's coming over for a party, everybody's coming over for the holidays. You're like, what am I going to make? Let me go ahead and order a pizza because it's steady. We know what it is. So what you're going to see from Washington is going to be their base stuff. A lot of what you saw against the Giants, or what you saw the good thing, that's going to get repeated. They may be able to pick up a couple of things that Detroit did well. But frankly, Detroit didn't perform that well. So maybe they don't have anything that they're going to pick up from that game. And you're right, losing those coaches and coordinators, it's a little bit different battle. Out of the routine, it's still going to come down to the fundamentals. Everything for me is going to come down to what happens up there in Ashburn, where David is at, what's happening inside the building. How do you correct your own mistakes? How do you get from 11 and 12 penalties, take that down to about 4, right? You clean those things up, you're going to give yourself a chance. Because I'm going to tell you this much. Matt LaFleur wants to make you look bad. He wants to make Washington look bad. He wants to prove a point and say that the Packers are one of the best teams in the league. And frankly, I got friends that are trying to embarrass me down here that are Packers fans, and I can't let that happen, David. I cannot let that happen.
Yeah, 100%. I'll tell you what, we got a comment in the live YouTube chat that says 3 takeaways for the Commanders defense. That person must have hacked my Google Drive, because I'll tell you right now, spoiler alert, on my last episode before the game, that's exactly the prediction that I've got. I think this team's getting 3 takeaways on Thursday night against the Green Bay Packers, but that's a conversation for later. As far as what's going on out here, guys, for one of the reasons that I just feel like this whole experience has been blended together is I was right here in Ashburn, 5 o'clock in the morning, Monday morning. And just a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, guys. I don't leave the stadium on a regular, noon, 1 o'clock kickoff. I don't leave the stadium until about 8, 9 o'clock at night. So by the time I get home, I basically just took a little bit of a nap, came right back out to get back to work. But I'm back to work because Dan Quinn was back to work. And there were cars in the player parking lot. There were cars in the coaching parking lot already by the time I got here. Zach Ertz told us after the game, he was asked, when do you flush this game, so to speak, and move on to Green Bay? And he said, I was in the shower. I'm already on to Green Bay. Like the change over to Green Bay is going to be immediate. You guys mentioned you love this early Thursday game, and I think that we all do, but Zach Ertz made a really good point here. They're just out of training camp mode. They're just out of that mode of, okay, we just went past, we just went hard, we just went to this preseason game, boom, now we're back to practice, getting ready for another performance. I think that's a great advantage for both teams, to be quite honest. It's not like a Commanders advantage only. The Packers are certainly in that same boat, but I think that's going to be something that really helps hopefully see those improvements. Talking to Brandon Coleman about some of the penalties, he called a lot of them dumb penalties on both sides of the ball, but said that they're all just mental and they're very easy to correct. The competitive penalties, I love Noah Igbenogany, but I always warn people he's good for like a DPI a game almost because of just how aggressive he is. You'll live with the competitive penalties, right, Anthony? You know that obviously from your playing days. Like those penalties, you're going to live with to a certain extent. It's the false starts, it's the offsides, it's the things that are just very, very easy, to a general perspective to be able to create or to correct. Seeing this team in here that early, following a victory Monday, and they're in here already that early, shows you that not only are they talking the talk of wanting to get those fixed, but they're putting it in practice, getting in here. Forget that week 1 win. We're now on to fixing our deficiencies.
Yeah, that's quick processing to quickly take what happened on Sunday and flush it, frankly, right? Say, hey, we already got to get things cleaned up and let's show up early and address those things fast because, frankly, you don't have as much time to prepare. Tuesday, Wednesday, and then next, you're traveling Wednesday. You mentioned Noah Noah. I'm gonna be real. I've struggled to
Just
try
do
to
it.
pronounce
It's
his
much
name.
easier. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I got you, Noah. Look, the DPI, that's something that that Matt LaFleur is going to be paying attention to. Look at how they call their routes. And you were texting with me earlier talking about the double moves. Are you going to see that from this team and how they will give a lot of looks to those DBs? And frankly, it tests your patience. Way back in my days in the Arena League, I used to be, well, I'm still pretty fast, but I used to be hella fast, right? 4.2 speed, but one of the best guys in the Arena League, Jermaine Jones, he would just stay patiently in his back pedal, and I wouldn't know what the decision to make. So those type of details, those type of specifics are going to come into play with the DBs going up against this Packers offense with those double moves. You got to limit the big plays because, frankly, in this game, you only get so many shots, Nick. You only get so many shots. And if you're going to be running double moves, they want to capitalize on that. So patience and being sound with your hands will be key this week. Don't get caught with the banana in the tailpipe, to quote Beverly Hills Cop.
One, great reference. Two, though, because you brought it up, what's your 40 time now? When's the last time you checked it?
So I was going to run it the other day. My son set up 40 in front of the house, and I go and I run one, and the time wasn't right. I'm like, you didn't do that right. It was like way too long. I don't even want to mention it on here. I went and ran another one, clock malfunction, ran a third, clock malfunction. I ran a fourth, pulled my quad. So I don't know what my current time is, but I will report back maybe later in the season. I think I got about a week left of recovery and IR and things of that nature. But I'm saying I could get a 4.4 when I'm at my best, Dunny. Dunny's laughing at me in the comments. I think I can get a 4.4. May not be a 4.3 guy anymore, but I would frankly be real. Terry wasn't reporting, and I was like, this might be my chance to see if I can renew my insurance one good time. You know what I mean? I just need a game. That's all I need, AP. Just let me retire a commander one time.
You know, it's funny because, everybody always talks about, like, Darryl Green, still how fast he could be over the years. I feel like that's one thing you can't totally lose. But clock malfunctions, we can't let those get in the way. So we'll wipe that clean and we'll go from there. You know, it's funny, talking about the offense. I mean, this is something we obviously talked about after the win over the Giants. And it's something that we hadn't really got a chance to talk about, obviously, before then. That was our first show on Sunday. But something that I've talked about on DC shows that I'm doing. And, like, my concern all summer really was, like, what is this offense going to look like early in the season with guys in and out on the offensive line? And then obviously Terry McLaurin was the big one with the spotlight all over that, where it's okay. Yeah, there's certainly chemistry between Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, but you add Deebo, you add all these things that are a part of it. When we're looking at a short week now heading into Green Bay, this still feels to me like it's going to be a defensive battle. One, because we saw what they were able to do with the 22 pressures on 45 dropbacks against the Giants. But two, short week, like, how much more can this team really improve, Anthony, if you're looking at this offense and going, week one, some timing was off. It's going to take a little bit of time, and then right back at it on Thursday. That's why I just look at this defense early in the season, at least the first month with the veterans, what they were able to do against the Giants, and it tells me that's where they're going to have to lean as the offense finds their rhythm.
You know, the offense should be able to pick up where they left off on the running side of things because that's where you had the most action last week, over 200 yards on the ground. Will Bill have that same performance? I sure as hell hope so. I really do. But I think you have to lean back to that and get to those big guys. Let them set the tone. The Packers only allowed 25 yards to David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs had 19. So they were zoned in on the running attack. But the thing is, I feel that the creativity of Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to find creative ways to make those runs happen. Jayden still ran for 60 yards. It was last game. So there's more ways that Washington can create run. Jared Goff is more of a statue back there. He tried to run for Micah Parsons. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. He should have known to throw the ball away at that point, but he decided to keep on running. Jayden can, one, get away from Micah. Two, will have delivered the ball at that time. So to me, I think you can pick up just fine off the running attack, and then Jayden's timing will get tighter. It's got to improve. And that's where I think you're going to see the biggest jump is in them being able to make plays off of the play action because they're going to be successful behind this run and attack. And you're going to get the ball into the end zone, see some Terry McLaurin doing a little mask celebration.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Anthony. I mean, you go back to that interception you mentioned, and I think that, everybody gets a little bit, touchy. A Lions fan hears me say that I think Jayden Daniels has better field vision, better pre-snap recognition than Jared Goff does. At this point, they're going to get highly offended because how dare you compare the seasoned vet to the young guy who's still young. But look, we saw it in the divisional round last year, right? This Washington Commanders defense victimized Jared Goff and that Lions offense by doing a lot of disguising, doing a lot of things where they made Jared Goff think one thing was coming, and it turns out another thing was coming, and then not giving him time to react and say, oh, it's not cover 2 or it's not cover 4. You're not keeping 2 safeties up high. It's actually cover 3 with one of those safeties crashing down in the box, which is exactly what happened on that interception. Jared never saw the safety who was lined up deep at the snap, dropping down into the box. And I mean, it was probably one of the more easy interceptions for a safety to get in that type of situation, because Jared just delivered it straight to him by 1, disguising the coverage, and then 2, not giving him time to recognize it. And if you can't recognize a pre-snap, you don't recognize that look. That's how you get victimized by that kind of stuff. I think Joe Witt Jr. is going to do a lot of similar things. On the offensive side, you mentioned that creativity. Look, there's another thing the Green Bay Packers don't have that the Washington Commanders do, and that's John Bates. That is the best blocking tight end in the National Football League per Zach Ertz, per Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, there's a little bit of bias there, right? But they're also very, very true. Brian Baldinger does a lot of breakdowns, did another breakdown after this game of John Bates' block on that Croskey-Merritt touchdown. So you talk about them being able to get Bill more loose than the Detroit Lions were able to get Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that's where you draw some of the confidence is, scheme, but also the personnel absolutely matters. And John Bates is going to execute some of those seal blocks and some of those things that they need to do to get Bill free that the Packers just couldn't do.
Oh, we got a guest. We got a little guest there, don't we, Anthony?
Yeah, this is Ava saying what's up. She doesn't have her burgundy and gold on today, but she had it on Sunday. She was definitely representing for us.
All right. She like the Packers or Commanders Thursday?
I think she's going to take the Commanders to cover for sure. Probably take the money line if she was old enough to bet. That would be her thing, but she's not old enough yet. So she'll take a little bit of time. You can take the suggestions if you'd like. Your choice.
There we go. Commanders plus 3.5 for her. All right. We mentioned the offense. Is it going to be more of a Deebo game on Thursday or more from Terry against the Packers? That's coming up next on Commander Squad. But when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your desktop tomorrow. Over 280 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest leads times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. You see what they did there? You need parts fast for a project? Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can also help save hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Just visit supplyhouse.com and sign up for free. Just use promo code SHNFL5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. All right, here we are. David Harrison is live from the practice field. Anthony Armstrong, Nick Ashooh, Commander Squad. Second episode for us. We got David till about 45 minutes into the show, and then you're going to go catch Dan Quinn and see what he has to say to the media before things are all done there. So we know that, Terry McLaurin, the conversation now is about football. It's no longer about his contract. Thank God, because I think everybody was probably sick of it, including Anthony, who's got the sign right behind his head with Terry finally signing, and we can move on from it. But in a lot of ways, this offseason and what went on with Terry McLaurin felt like it overshadowed what Deebo Samuel could bring to this offense. I get that some people may have forgotten because the 49ers dealt with injuries. He wasn't healthy all of last year. A lot of stuff went on in San Francisco. But week 1 against the Giants, with what Deebo Samuel was able to bring to the table, Anthony, when I look at what they can do in terms of this offense and the wrinkles that he brings, if it takes a couple of weeks for Terry to get really worked back into this offense, football shape, whatever, cliche or narrative or storyline we want to use with that, if that's the case, having Deebo Samuel mirror what he did against the Giants, that's a really good way to kind of pad that growth for this offense.
Oh, absolutely. Having Deebo over there is probably the best number 2 receiver that Terry McLaurin's had an opportunity to work with in his entire career. No disrespect to anybody who's been over there. And same thing, you align it with Jayden Daniels, the best quarterback that he's had to work with. Now, one thing to consider as a defensive coordinator, you got to decide who you're going to take away. Obviously, they're going to pay attention to 5, but they got to pick a receiver that they want to slow down the most. And Terry McLaurin has been that guy. Deebo Samuel is trying to prove himself to everybody else in the league to show that he still has it. The week 1 performance lets me know he still got it. He's in good shape. He's ready to make an impact. The biggest thing that he brings is his versatility and usage. It's not just line him up on the outside and he's going to have to share catches with Terry. Normally, he's getting handoffs. He's taking some carries from the running backs in the backfield. Right? He's doing a lot of different things that help spread the ball around, takes a lot of pressure off of some of those other positions. And frankly, I think it helps you, not have to keep Chris Rodriguez on because of what Deebo is going to be able to do. You still have a power running back in a sense. So ultimately, if Deebo is still having success underneath and in that mid-range, now you're going to have to see those safeties get a little bit nosy. And like I said earlier, I'm hoping to get Terry McLaurin over the top and get him unlocked with this offense. And I mean, Terry averages 84 receiving yards against the Packers in his 3 games overall. All right. He went from 122 back in 2021. All of the games he's had a touchdown. So history tells me that he's going to be all right and he should get some action Thursday night. Nick?
Yeah, I think there's going to be some level of a spotlight on Terry McLaurin no matter what, right? And I think that's going to be natural with this whole situation. I don't think the team will be overall worried with it as long as it continues. But David, I think you could probably agree that like the narrative around the fans and maybe even at least some of the media, I think it's more fan related than media related, is going to be, hey, you got paid. Now at some point you got to start putting up those numbers. That's not necessarily fair given matchups and schemes and all types of different things going on. But like, we got to be honest with ourselves. We've seen this before. I compared it years ago to Bryce Harper, where it's like everybody loved Bryce Harper in DC till they started talking about $300 million for him. And if he didn't hit a home run every single game, it was like, Bryce Harper sucks. He's a bum. I know he left anyway, and it's not going to be the same with Terry McLaurin. But like, David, I'm sure you've already kind of heard it from some people a little bit like, okay, now we need Terry to step up getting $32 million a year.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a difference between production and a difference between delivering for your team, right? And I think Terry McLaurin certainly delivered against the New York Giants in week 1. I mean, he had more snaps on the field than any other wide receiver did wearing burgundy and gold. And considering how much of training camp he missed and how many questions we had about his conditioning and all that stuff, it shows. And as far as his own personal approach, not being a major part to contribute to the win statistically, talking to him in the locker room after the game, he was the same old Terry. Terry is happy when the team wins and the team is successful. He understands that he's got a major role to play in that, but when the team wins and is successful, even if his stat line isn't the greatest, he's not going to sweat that a whole lot, right? And week 1, the New York Giants, it's going to be pick your poison every week, right? But the New York Giants chose the poison pill of let's overcommit to Terry and let's make sure these other guys don't kill us. Well, the other guys killed him, you know what I mean? And that's what's going to happen week in, week out. So if the Green Bay Packers want to come out and they want to play high-low on Terry, they want to double him, put an extra defender on him, because you also got to defend Jayden, right? So you need all 11 of your defenders playing the field. So the more you put on not just Terry, the more it's going to open up Deebo. It's going to open up Zach Ertz. It's going to open up Austin Eckler out of the backfield. I'm telling you right now, I think Bill has receiver ability out of the backfield as well. Jayden as a runner, right? Jalen Lane even got free a little bit. So the more he gets his feet under him, the better off he's going to be. We saw that big hit to Chris Moore in the situation. So it's one of those things where the more teams realize that the Deebo of last year is not the Deebo you're getting in 2025, the less they're going to be allowed to commit all that attention to Terry. And that's when you're going to start seeing Terry really kind of be able to get off and do his thing. But in the meantime, and this is honestly the great thing about Jayden Daniels, is if you want to roll coverage over to Terry and just commit a whole lot of resources there, fine. I'll pick you apart with the rest of these guys, and we'll all go home happy. Fantasy teams may not go home happy, but they're not going to be worried about that. They're worried about going 1-0 this week and next week, and that's just how it's going to roll, right? But make no mistake about it, it's like when Marshawn Lattimore got on the field against the New Orleans Saints for the first time after the trade, and the Saints not only didn't target him, they didn't even run towards him. They just said, we're just, wherever Marshawn is, we don't want the ball going in that direction. That's production, right? That is Marshawn Lattimore delivering for the Washington Commanders, because it literally takes about a quarter of the field away on any given snap. That to the team is worth every single penny, every single draft pick they send. So while Terry maybe didn't get the touchdown, didn't get the catches, trust me, the team is very happy with what happened because just having him on the field helped them dictate what was going on in that game.
All right, so let me write this down. Players don't care about your fantasy team. Let me make sure.
Yeah, breaking news. Breaking news. Only get that from Ashburn. You only get that here.
It's funny though, because like think about for so many years with Terry McLaurin, the conversation was look at what he does with so little. In the past, it was he needs a quarterback that can actually get him the ball, or he needs another wide receiver that can kind of take some of that attention away. And you know, I think as the season goes on, we'll certainly see like defenses aren't stupid, defensive coordinators aren't dumb. Like they know what Deebo Samuel can do. We now have film a little bit of what he can do, you know, in this offense. So I think it's right now would say the hope, but it has to be depending on what the Green Bay Packers game plan is, Anthony. The hope is that Deebo Samuel takes away a lot of those looks and those defensive schematics where it's actually a focus on him as well that allows Terry McLaurin to get involved in this game. Could we see maybe them trying to, I don't even want to use the word force feed because I think that that's maybe it doesn't really do justice in terms of what the game plan might be, but trying to go to Terry early just to get him involved against Green Bay?
I could see you giving him an early catch. Yeah, get early couple, you know, just to get him started. But there also could, on the flip side, be one of those where just be a little bit patient because we're setting something up, right? We're trying to see what the defense gives us before we go out there and attack with Terry. The beautiful thing is that you don't have to deal with Jair Alexander. I love the fact that he's not over there. He's a pretty good corner, you know, respectfully. I mean, whatever happened on that Sunday night game, that's for a whole other show. But
man, we need another show for that game. Good God. And last night.
My goodness. It was, man, that's bad. But nonetheless, Terry and Deebo have a much better matchup against this secondary in my eyes. Right? You still can't go out there and disrespect them because it is the league. But, you know, give them something early. But you got to know that this offense is something that is systematic. Cliff isn't necessarily motioning and shifting people to get into specific spots because there's no huddle, right? I did see more shifts than they did last year, and I think that was wise to add that into the offense to try to add some variety and some novelty for the defense. But ultimately, Terry's going to get his rock whenever it comes his way, whenever the defense gives the look that's necessary, and Jayden will put it on him this time. I don't think that they're going to miss another gold ball for the rest of the year. Outside of Jayden's going to get his accuracy down. So, David, ultimately, I don't know any other way for it to go about, but I do think you got to get Terry activated early, but we can still have some patience if it takes a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the difference between force feeding and trying to get a guy going are very significant, right? Getting a guy going, maybe a screen, maybe a quick hitch, maybe a quick drag, real quick to exploit some underneath coverage and just get him the ball. Forcing the ball to me is what, and I love Taylor, right? But it's what Taylor Heineke used to do is just F it. Terry's down there somewhere. It doesn't matter if there's 2, 3, 4, 5 guys around there. We're going to try to put the ball. To me, that's what force feeding is. And obviously that's not what you want to do. But yeah, getting the guy going. I mean, I don't remember the stat right off the top of my head, and it's definitely a LeBron stat. It's not, a real critical game planning type of number. But there was at one point last year, is like any game that Terry had 7 or more targets, the Commanders won. So it was like, just target Terry McLaurin on the first 7 plays, and boom, you're guaranteed to win. Obviously, that's ridiculous, right? But it just kind of showcases a little bit, helps you illustrate just how valuable number 17 can be. I've been sitting here thinking, guys, so you mentioned, Micah talking about, I've only been with this team for 10 days, and this is going to shift gears just a little bit. I got a little bit of a hot take here. We know that Cliff loves this no-huddle offense, right? We know Jayden runs his no-huddle offense really, really well. And the thing that's beautiful about it is we see these quarterbacks out here practicing these no-huddle. Like, they've got a script for these no-huddle, processes that we see here. Now, last week, we did see some no-huddle or some quick tempo where they were still subbing. So the Giants were allowed to sub here and there and doing all those things. I think when you get Micah Parsons on the field, if you can get Micah Parsons on the field, you hit him with that no huddle. You keep Micah on the field because, like Micah already said, he's going to be with this team for about 14 days by the time this game comes in. He has that injury he's dealing with. He had them missing training camp, so there's some conditioning concerns there as well. If you're not just completely getting terrorized by this guy, keep him on the field, man. And I hate for the burgundy and gold to ever make anybody wearing a Dallas Cowboy logo look good, but also maybe run the ball at him, right? Run the ball at him, and maybe Jerry Jones will be on the radio in Texas on Friday morning talking about, well, you see, guys, that's why we traded him, because he can't stop the run. So you get him tired. You get him in a situation where maybe he doesn't understand all the checks, all the calls, get him a little bit confused, get him a little discombobulated, get him tired. And it might be one of those rare matchups, and I want to emphasize it would be rare, that you might be able to actually exploit Micah Parsons.
First off,
A little bit of a
anytime
hot
we
take.
can get I love hot takes. There should be plenty of these on this show. I'm okay with that too. Anytime we can get a Jared Jones impression, I'm all for that. So we all
It was
can do our
terrible, but
Jared
I
Jones
went for it.
impression. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be ridiculous, right? And you want to find yourself some glory hole. That's all we want to do.
That's what
I'm
I was
looking
waiting for. The glory hole.
Come on, we can't not talk about the glory hole now. We know that's got we want to be able to stop the run here now. Listen, anytime somebody that's as vital to a defense as Micah Parsons now is to Green Bay, which by the way, still a weird statement to say what less than 2 weeks since the trade or whatever it's been, saying Micah Parsons and Green Bay in the same sentence. But he's coming out and talking about how, like, hey, I wish I could have been here sooner so I could really gel with these guys. Yeah, you take advantage of that. You do every little thing that you can to strategize with that. So first off, I think you're not even giving yourself enough credit. I don't think that's a hot take. I think it's a smart strategy, and I think that's the way to approach it. You know, I was looking at the targets here, and heavy overload week 1 for Deebo Samuel with 10 targets. Now, 7 receptions, 77 yards. Of course, he had the rushing touchdown. You got the production that you needed here. But after that, it's Zach Ertz with 5, Terry with 4. So Deebo Samuel doubled up everybody in terms of targets week 1. I'd certainly expect those targets to look a little bit different, but it doesn't just have to be Terry McLaurin on top of that, right? Like, we certainly expect that. But Zach Ertz in the 5 targets, I think we expect Zach Ertz to be involved in this offense as a safety net for Jayden Daniels week after week after week. And Anthony, for somebody that was almost kind of looked at as like washed up and done in the NFL for what we got last year, and for somebody that had, like we talked about on the show on Sunday, that Rex Grossman short attention span, short memory, forget about what happened, had that drop, and then goes and scores the touchdown later on. And so it's like, you've got guys on this roster besides just Terry McLaurin that can pick up the slack if this is going to be a couple of weeks and you maybe even can't get him involved in the short week against Green Bay. But I'd expect another big week from Zach Ertz too.
I would take that bet as well because Sam Laporta had a good day, 6 for 79, going over there against the Packers.
Oh, you stole one of my props, my friend. That is yes.
Hey, that could be your prop. That'll be your prop. You can take it, but I'm just looking at the history. It lets me know they got to take somebody away. And then the way they're going to find a way to get the ball to Zach Ertz. If he's a mismatch problem for somebody, Cliff Kingsbury will get him activated. And I think you need to get him rolling to take some pressure off and get the safeties nosy in there. Brian Branch, hell of a safety. I need him paying attention to 86, not paying attention to 17. All right, they have a good talent back there, and being able to use Zach Ertz in a way off of play action will be good. I love the use of him down on that goal line route. That was diabolical. The fact that they went empty and targeted that one rookie, the young linebacker, I should say. Putting Ertz in play is huge. One for me, and going back to tying in the running game, John Bates. That's going to be the guy. Basically, every offensive lineman is well over 300 pounds. And then you have John Bates, about 256, with a big old handlebar mustache. He wants to block people all day. He don't want nobody to throw the rock his way. He's going to get his hands on Micah Parsons, and that's going to be somebody to pay attention to really affect how this goes in this game. So Ertz and John Bates need a big game from both of those guys. You could see a lot of 12 personnel to get the run game started before you move into the rest of the game and open things up a bit.
Yeah, I think we're in a spot here with this where it's so early in the season. There's a lot of wrinkles that you can still throw out. And the good thing for Washington being on the short week, heading into Green Bay, a tough place to play, is that there still isn't a lot of just film on this offense this year with some of these guys out there, which they can still throw some things out there. And that's an advantage as opposed to like 8 weeks into the season. Oh, everything's there. I think that short week can also be used to their advantage. We have not had a chance yet to talk about what Jayden Daniels, one, looked like against the Giants on this show, but also what could that mean against this Packers rush and pass rush and defensive line, and also the Commanders' run game still to come here on Commander Squad. And, of course, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. $5, that's all you've got to do. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. That is a ton. That's the biggest number I think that they've ever had before. Look, I love using FanDuel. We kind of teased it a little bit earlier in the show here. There is a prop and there is a total in this game that I've already bet that I absolutely love in this. And I think it is one of the great spots, too, where you can have the same game parlays. There's some live betting options with them that are great. I certainly threw those into the Monday night game, Sunday night game, a little live betting. It just makes every game a little more exciting, right? You're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup too. They got the whole fantasy side of things too. It's quick, easy. The app is fantastic. The website is great. No glitches, no bugs. We don't like bugs when we're using apps and websites. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, so we obviously, guys, saw an inconsistent, maybe out-of-sync offense that we've mentioned a little bit in the show, but it hasn't been as much necessarily yet about Jayden Daniels. 19 of 30, 233 yards, a touchdown. But the big thing for me against one of the few things the Giants can actually do well is get after the quarterback. We're going to see something similar against Green Bay. 3 sacks, just the QB rating for Jayden Daniels was 98.3, but that QBR down at 54.9. They're so different, but these are stats can be a little bit misleading. But at the same time, the one thing that stood out to me with all that across the board, Anthony, was the 3 sacks. For somebody that's as mobile as Jayden Daniels, it's very clear that was the Giants' goal, was to disrupt that offense, knowing what we know, right? Like, they know it, we know it, everybody knows it. The offense didn't get time to work together consistently this offseason. And I can imagine that the Green Bay Packers are probably going to do the exact same thing Thursday night on Jayden.
They're still going to bring some pressure. I mean, they had success last week against Jared Goff, and new week, new schemes. You don't face the Packers that often, so it's going to slow your processing time down a little bit. The fact is that you got to be clear with your decision-making. If it's not there, have a quick decision on number 2, but also he's knowing that the spies are going to be there. They're going to try to compress the pocket. I mean, he understands these things. I think Jaden's going to be okay, and if he's able to get going quickly with screens and getting the ball out on the edges, soften up the defense so it's not a first drive, 3rd and long type of scenario. I don't want that to be his first opportunity to throw the ball. Make it easy. We talked about it earlier. Getting Terry McLaurin started. Let me get Deebo on a little quick screen. Hey, you know what? Let's use Bill on a screen on a 2nd and 8 or something along those lines, right? Use that type of play calling and flexibility to get Jayden rolling and get him in a good rhythm. That's the way I see it rocking, David. Ultimately, a lot of it's going to fall on your play caller. The play caller is responsible to get his quarterback and get his offense in a rhythm. After that, they get to communicate, and you get to put in the next play, the big play. Say, hey, coach, I see this. Let's call a double move.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Dan Quinn uses a lot of boxing analogies. I kind of like to use the boxing analogies as well. And in this matchup, you got a strength on strength, at least from week 1, small sample size, right? But Washington Commanders run offense versus the Green Bay Packers run defense. It's going to be strength on strength just because that's their strength. Just because a guy guards his solar plexus really well, it doesn't mean you don't take shots at him. It doesn't mean you go out there and you test that defense. And you mentioned it earlier with Deebo Samuel, even when Chris Rodriguez Jr. isn't active, you've got 4 running backs anyway. Well, I'll add another guy that we haven't seen it yet, so it's a little bit hard to really say you can count on it, and I'm not saying you can. But you've also got Ben Sinnott, right? You can play that H-back. Adam Peters compared him to Kyle Juszczyk when they drafted him. So you have the potential to have 5 guys up there, and you've got offensive linemen. You got some backups like Andrew Wiley, Trent Scott, who have a lot of experience. Put some active, or some eligible linemen out there. Get big. Help out the rookie Josh Connolly. We had a comment earlier mentioning Josh Connolly versus Micah. Help him out with the chip blocks. Help him out with an eligible lineman on that side with them. Take those body shots. Just because the Packers are good at blocking those body shots and absorbing them doesn't mean you can't land some. It doesn't mean you can't actually turn it into something that maybe you can set up for something else later on. And that's when Jayden goes to Cliff and says, hey, we got a haymaker over here. Let's go ahead and throw that right hook when they think that low hook is coming. So just a little bit of the strategy of the game, right? I expect them to absolutely sit here and try to get their run game established. One of the questions I'm asked Dan Quinn today in his press conference is how much do you kind of try to feel like, okay, what we're trying to do isn't working, now it's time to pivot? Because we've seen some coaches go into the 4th quarter just being hard-headed, and we've seen coaches come off their original game plan in the 1st quarter saying, all right, this ain't going to work, let's shift to plan B. So I think there's kind of an art, but there's also kind of a science behind it. So interested to hear what DQ has to say about it, because he's not going to tell me the full truth, but he'll tell me a little bit of truth.
Well, I think we can't expect a coach to give you the full thing. There's not many coaches that do that. It's funny because then we want coaches to be honest, and then they're honest, and you're like, stop giving away the game plan. So we'll take that. Look, when I look at the Micah Parsons matchup, I just want to go back to that because I think this is something to really keep in mind here too, because it kind of goes to the pass rush and disrupting Jayden Daniels in that offense. Micah Parsons has more sacks against this Commanders team than any other team in the NFL. I know it's the Packers. I know it's a little bit different, but this is a guy that gets up for this team. And Dan Quinn, his former defensive coordinator, and Dorrance Armstrong's out there, a former teammate. And, you're kind of looking at this going, it's a bright spotlight. It's a big moment. He hasn't been out there long. He's got a chip on his shoulder. This is going to be a game, I think, where they're going to have to, one, keep an eye. Obviously, I'm not like I'm going out on a limb here saying it. Keep an eye on Micah Parsons the entire time and take him out of it. But there's other opportunities here, hopefully, too, where you can use Jayden's legs. Listen, I think running the ball as much as he did with the 11 carries for 68 yards, we're hoping maybe not getting exposed as much. But you do still have that option. And this is always the difficult thing with quarterbacks. And this is going to be a balance that we're probably always going to be talking about, I think, with this team as we see it with, a Lamar Jackson or, a Josh Allen, where it's you want to accentuate these quarterback abilities to run with the football, but you don't want to make it so it's a crutch. Not that Jayden uses it as a crutch at all, but when you watch him, you can tell that he's looking to throw the football, go through his progressions, and at least still has that to lean on. And as long as it's that as a backup plan, it's like pull the ripcord and it's your parachute versus like a bunch of design runs against what Green Bay has defensively. I think they're certainly in a much better spot, but there could be a chance where Jayden Daniels is running all over the field. I think his rushing yards prop, by the way, set as 43.5 in this too. So we could see him running the ball quite a bit, Anthony.
I would take the over on the quarterback running yards. I mean, they set it pretty low, and it's not too hard for him to break off a 20-yarder, a couple of those, and next thing you know, he's going to have that over. What I am happy with is that they gave him lead blockers on a few of those runs. They gave him some people to escort him on the run. But his ability to keep his eyes downfield is what's going to be special, because the people are going to, react to him running, and he's going to be able to make some plays over the top, drop it off of a scramble drill. I think that's something to pay attention to, because frankly, every single week, a defensive coordinator is going to have another wrinkle, another way to try to slow Jayden down. They're going to try to put a fast safety out there to try to be a spy. I wouldn't be surprised if you had Brian Branch get in the box and try to stay close to Jayden to make sure he's not able to rush. You might catch Micah Parsons that's dropping out. They'll put some zones, a blitz over here, and then drop a D lineman out here to try to take away a hot. There's so many options that are going to be out there. And between Jayden and Cliff Kingsbury, that's going to have to get it tightened up. I got somebody joining me back behind me once again, Nick. They're trying to steal the show. It's like in the back. Is it just how you handle the backfield, Nick? This is live. This is how we handle things over here.
You're doing a great job just kind of keeping her back out of there. But you listen, anytime she wants to air, yeah. All right. So she likes Commanders plus 3.5 and maybe the over on Jayden Daniels rushing yards, right? So, David, do you expect to see a similar rushing effort from Jayden Daniels, kind of like Anthony and I do?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jayden, he's never going to steer away from his own athleticism. I think the great thing is that Cliff Kingsbury is never going to ask him to. Dan Quinn is never going to ask him to. And, as we look ahead to Cliff Kingsbury potentially getting a head coaching job at some point, whoever takes over that offensive coordinator position is going to have to understand, look, Jayden is an athlete. Jayden is a playmaker. So you're not going to bottle him up. You're not going to stick him in the pocket and tell him to just stand there. That's going to be part of who he is. And when you're a defensive coordinator, understanding that, look, there are some quarterbacks that when they take off and run, the offensive coordinator's on the sideline saying, no, dude, like, that third read was open or that fourth read was coming open. Just stay patient, stay in the pocket. And now they're kind of working against themselves. This one, it's absolutely a part of the plan. It's absolutely a part of what makes them great. Those off-script plays, the second play that Dan Quinn always talks about, like, we talk about pillars of an offensive game plan. We talk about strategy, all that stuff. That part being in there 24/7 is such a great dynamic for this Commanders offense, such a great threat against the Green Bay Packers defense. And I watched several plays where Jared Goff either got sacked or got hit or, throws off trajectory because the pressure got in. And I know a big, storyline coming out of that game was all the Packers just harassed the Detroit Lions offensive line all game and just got in Jared Goff's face the entire game. There's a lot of snaps there, guys. I saw where I'm like, okay, Jayden's already taken off by now. Or Jayden's running away from this pressure. Jayden's doing this. Jayden's doing that. And, you can't copy paste, obviously, one game to another one. But if those type of trends develop on Thursday night, Jayden is not going to be nearly as harassed as Jared Goff was, given like circumstances.
All right, David, I know you got to run. You got to get to Dan Quinn's press conference, so we'll let you drop out of here. We'll get some final thoughts in the final segment here on what we expect from this game. And like I said, got a couple of bets in this. I would say maybe you jump over to FanDuel and you hit those now. It's the Commander Squad show. And the NFL season is back. Honestly, there's really never been a better thing than going to a stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team, even if you're going to go all the way to Green Bay for this one. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. I got some friends that are actually going to be at Lambeau, and they actually used Game Time to go out there and get those. You don't have to deal with queues, you don't have to login screens and the price jumping at checkout. All that stuff's frustrating. I've used it. They use it. The app gives you that advantage all the way back to every single fan. Game Time is fast. It's easy. It's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You're always going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is actually the thing you pay, which is a nice change of pace given the world that we live in today. When you check it out, you can see a lot of games even under $100, which, listen, tickets are expensive now. Finding deals is a great way to go. The app made it super simple. I could even go and see the exact view from my seat before buying. That's great, by the way, knowing what your view actually looks like. So you got zone deals. You pick a section. Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. All these things, all these creative ways to make your experience better at a stadium. Download the Game Time app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. All right, now I was giving you a chance, David, to run, but you can hang for a couple minutes if you want. I know you're going to go see Dan Quinn talk. So any final thoughts here before you run to the press conference?
So we're actually good. I got a text while we're airing here, and the schedule's been pushed back a little bit, so I'm actually good to wrap up here with you guys. But I think that
you sent me a text like I was going to see that. I got 5 things going on at once here. Yeah, I see the text now.
I'm telling you, you have it in multiple ways. I send it to you in multiple ways. I'm trying to get the word out to you. We need a production assistant to be able to run between the three.
Oh boy, yeah.
And tell everybody what's going on. But I think that ultimately it's a great measuring stick, right, for the Washington Commanders where they are versus a playoff caliber team. It's not a defining measuring stick moment by any means. I think both of these teams, the Packers and the Commanders, are going to be much better in January and even in February than they are here in September. And that's good because they also both might see each other again in January or February. So it's going to have good experience. Something I will say, guys, that I've been really happy about is during training camp, you guys know, like you watch training camp, you're like, oh, that's a new wrinkle. Oh, that's something we didn't see last year. But you never truly know, is it a new wrinkle because of something that, the offense is putting in, or is it a new wrinkle because something that the defense needs to be able to anticipate seeing? There's a couple new wrinkles that we saw during training camp that I saw when the Packers were playing the Lions. And it was kind of like a little bit of a light bulb moment. It's like, okay, these guys might have been game planning against this Packers offense for a little while now, getting a little bit of a head start. Now, I think the way the Commanders offense executed some of those wrinkles, it's certainly something you can see them use against an opponent like the Packers as well. But some of the things that we saw them do really, really well against the Lions last week, I know this defense is prepared for because I've literally witnessed them defending those types of looks and those types of plays already. So I think that regardless of what happens on the field Thursday night, we can all go to bed confident that this coaching staff had this team as best prepared as they possibly could for an early September game.
One of the things that I just want to go to one more thing on Jayden before we move on to this run game, because I do want to look at, the backfield and kind of how that's going to go moving forward. Even with it really not being the best Jayden Daniels game week 1, every single time, like, there was an overthrow or a miscommunication or whatever, he was smiling. Like, I watched Caleb Williams in the Monday night game, and when he makes a mistake, and I know there's a lot more pressure on him because of his rookie season versus Jayden Daniels, and like it or not, Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, and Drake May are all going to be compared to each other. When you're drafted 1, 2, 3 like that, that's just how this thing works. But, Anthony, when I'm watching Jayden Daniels make a mistake, but just smile, calm, cool, collected, like, relax, like, that goes a long way because it's not like he doesn't take it seriously. It's that, okay, I made a mistake. I move forward. I have that short memory. And that means he's not dwelling in the mistakes. And that means that something that happened on a previous play or in a previous game has really no hindrance whatsoever on what he does moving forward.
It has no hindrance at all. Deep in the dictionary with that one, Nick. Look,
once a show, my friend. Once a show.
You got to do it. I get my word of the day on my app, but I don't know what it is yet today, so I ain't gonna use it today.
All right.
Look,
We should start making
Jayden,
you have to just like figure it out on every show,
yeah,
like how you can fit in your word of the day.
yeah, let's do that. But don't catch me thinking about what the word
Okay.
actually means. All right, just throw it out there and we'll just keep it rolling. I tell you this much: Jayden Daniels takes the pressure off of the receiver. All right, there's a big difference between him going, "Hey, my bad," versus what the hell was that? You get what I'm saying? I played with both quarterbacks. When you have that one that's always raising their hand, like, well, he ran the wrong or he did, you don't really have good chemistry between each other. But when the quarterback can say, "Hey, my bad, I can make that throw next time," then we're going to be on the same page and everything
You
is
want to
going
say
to be
some
cool.
names? You want to give us some names?
Nah, not right
Yeah.
now, man. We ain't got but 10 minutes left. We ain't got
All
less
right.
than 10
All
minutes left. I've had teammates across the way. And frankly, you talk about body language. My last season and my last training camp in Cleveland, Johnny Manziel, he was, throw a ball and kind of hang his head. I'm like, hey, man, pick your head up. You're the leader on the offense. We need you to have, certain demeanor. All right. So, that's just how things go. And I'm not, knocking Caleb Williams, but he's going to change his leadership. He's going to have to change the way he reacts to some things, David, and make sure that he, handles himself differently on the field. And when you look at how Jayden is a leader, when you look at how Jayden has handled meetings and he's done all these things that even before you even get on the field, that lets you know they made a great selection. And I'm glad to have 5 in burgundy and gold.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, I sent a tweet out. It was either before the game or during the game, the Bears-Vikings game. I said, every Commanders fan, anytime you meet a Bears fan or if you know a Bears fan, man, give them a high five, buy them a beer, buy them a pizza, because Chicago Bears are the reason you have Jayden Daniels. That's a totally different story. But look, watching that game, Bears-Vikings, just to kind of draw home the comparison, like, yes, there is more pressure on Caleb being the number 1 overall pick and all these things. But even J.J. McCarthy, man, like the way that he was interacting on the sideline after throwing that pick 6 with his teammates versus the way Caleb Williams was interacting as things weren't going so well. And we all know the TV broadcast can be deceiving as well. You don't get to see every single thing, so I want to be careful here. But there's just a palpable difference. And as much as Caleb is going to be compared to Jayden and Drake throughout his entire career, he's also going to be compared to J.J. McCarthy because they're in the same division. They're going to see each other twice. And if J.J. McCarthy starts beating Caleb Williams, quote unquote, even though they're never on the field at the same time, that's going to become a problem. That's only going to apply more and more pressure. That pressure on Jayden Daniels is still very real. Maybe not as elevated, but this Commanders franchise has been dying of thirst, has been in the desert for a long, long time. Fans have been in the desert for a long, long time. I know there's still some fans who still worry that maybe this is all a figment of their imagination and this isn't real and everything else. I think as the course of the season goes, they'll even start to believe, but I don't think it's a disbelief in Jayden. It's a fear of getting hurt, right? Like it's they want to stop the cycle of abuse here, guys. And I don't want to make light of abuse, but you get where I'm going with that. And I think that is something that Jayden's got to deal with. But like you guys said, man, I mean, he just loves playing the game. You watch him out here in practice and just loving life, competing with David Blau, competing with whoever he can compete with. The dude just loves competing. He loves annoying guys like Brian Burns. Like you love hearing a defender say he talks too much. That's exactly what you want to hear. Because I think it also, you go back to, I'm going to show my age a little bit, but you go back to the Joe Montana, John Candy story, right? And the brief version for anybody who hasn't heard it, like critical moment of a major game. And Joe Montana is not panicking. He said, hey, look, John Candy, this comedian's up in the stands. That's cool. All right, let's go win this game, guys. And it just brings everybody back down to earth. When your quarterback is tied up and twisted, Anthony, confirm it, or correct me if I'm wrong, but when your quarterback is ratcheted up and tight, everybody's ratcheted up and tight.
It's like what the dogs sense your aura, kids sense your aura too, and receivers and everybody else senses the quarterback's aura. Being calm and relaxed is big. Sometimes people think he doesn't take it serious. It's like, no. You take it serious, but you understand how to read the temperature in the room. You understand where people are trending, and being able to have that guy that you can lean to. And I've heard more people point to this quarterback, Jayden Daniels, as being the reason why they're going to have success, Nick. And man, he gives you confidence. Like, you know what I mean? Like at the end of the game, we still got 5 on it. We good. We still got a minute and 30. Jayden's going to figure it out. Ava understands that too.
Between John Candy references, Beverly Hills Cop, and then deep in the dictionary, I think we pulled out every single reference that we probably could in this. But yeah, it's funny, David, you talking about that. Before you jumped on the show on Sunday after the game, Anthony and I were talking about this, and it's like, it's scars. Like, there are scars from what's happened in the past year. I mean, like, I haven't covered this team on the beat, but I've covered this team in the DC media for years at various outlets and had to talk about this team that I grew up a fan of as well. And it's like, there's been a lot of suffering. And we remember going back to 2012 and RG3 and thinking that was the moment and then where it is. And again, it's not the same situation, not the same player. None of those are the same other than the feeling of hope that a fan base has. And you look at Chicago and Bears fans, and Caleb Williams still has a very high ceiling. But I think when you look at it, there are more questions around him certainly than Jayden Daniels. The questions around what Jayden Daniels has become as a quarterback are just solely on, is this going to last, right? It's like for so long you're out there and you're going on you think you've met somebody and it's going to work out and this is the one, and then it doesn't work out and you're going, I'm just going to be, I'm never going to find the right person. And finally it works out, you get married, everything. Eventually franchises, if they keep trying, you get that franchise quarterback, and Washington, from a talent perspective, clearly has it. It's just protecting your asset, which is something Washington certainly did this offseason, going out and addressing the offensive line and really making a point to protect their quarterback, unlike, like what the Colts did years ago with Andrew Luck, and we never know what Andrew Luck could have ever been. I want to look at the run game before we're done here, though, because obviously Bill Croskey-Merritt, which I want to pick a bone here with like every official score that's out there. He's still Ja'Cory Croskey-Merritt in like every box score, and it drives me insane. He's Bill. Let's call him Bill. Let's get the name right here. But 10 carries, 82 yards, 42-yard run, touchdown, all of these things, the hype around him in the preseason. We know that he was a 7th-round pick, didn't get to play at all really his last year at Arizona, probably wouldn't have been a 7th-round pick. To me, when it's all said and done, Anthony, I see a guy that's an absolute steal for them, and I see somebody that I really do believe, given his versatility and his ability to make the big play when they need it as well, I think he's somebody that's really going to grab the reins and get significant carries and more touches as the season goes on.
Bill Merritt. Get to know the name, adjust it, and make it a name brand thing for sure. Look, he brings something to the offense that is very unique. His ability to bounce outside and get down around the edge. He did that on the touchdown run. He did it in the preseason, and he shows that speed to break the long runs. That's something that we need in this offense. We haven't even seen the full iteration of what he can do, I don't think. And I will say this, for all the folks in college, I don't advise you skip your senior year in hopes of getting drafted. It may not help you out, but it's really worked out for him. And the fact that you always talk about the mileage on running backs. He has a whole year off, right? So he's coming in fresh, and he's inspired and motivated to play ball again. So I love the fact that he's getting in there right now. He's bringing some extra pizzazz to the offense. Now, is he going to have a lot of success on Sunday? I don't know, but I love the question, not the question, but the phrasing you gave earlier about what are you bringing production wise? He's going to bring something, because now he's put stuff on tape that defenses have to account for, right? There may be a fact that they bump a linebacker over one bit or bump the edge out one extra bit that's going to provide some protection against Bill, but it opens up something for the offense. So they'll catch up to those nuances and see what Green Bay is putting out there, and they're going to have a counterpunch for whatever Green Bay's trying to throw, Nick.
Yeah, I think in the end, what they were looking for was versatility. Cliff Kingsbury said he wanted versatility, and it's very clear that they already have a lot of weapons, David, that bring that versatility to the field, which, importantly enough, as the season goes on, you can add those new wrinkles. It starts obviously with Green Bay, but it then becomes a situation where, like, as the season goes on, Cliff Kingsbury hopefully evolves that offense as it goes. All right, we got a couple of minutes left. I want to start with you, David. Final thoughts, predictions, whatever it is for this game. Lay it all out on the table.
I think it's going to boil down to discipline. I think at the end of the day, you got two very physical, very aggressive teams. I think it's going to boil down to discipline. If the Washington Commanders lap the Giants, to steal a term from DQ, if they lap the Packers the way they lap the Giants, I should say, in penalties and mistakes, then they're not going to come out of this game with a win. But if they can lock that down a little bit, be a more disciplined team, then I think that this game's going to go all the way down to the wire, and it's going to be a very just a great Thursday night matchup.
To me, it is a very winnable litmus test, right? It's an early litmus test to see where you're at, see where you stand, because frankly, you're going to see this team later on in the season. You'll see them, frankly, in 2026 when the playoffs roll around. So where do you stand right now against these other squads? Where do you stand against the greats in this league? And how are you going to show up? I love to talk about the discipline, because like I said earlier, it's all in the building right up there on 21300 Joe Gibbs Park, whatever the address is now. That's where it has to happen. happen in those meeting rooms, how they show up and how they prepare themselves, and is going to determine what they do on Thursday. And a couple of lines I like. I will say this, Nick. I like the fact that I would take the over on Terry and Deebo receiving yards, 55.5 for Terry, 43.5 for Deebo. And I want to take the under on Josh Jacobs rushing yards. That'd be 78.5. I'd take the under on that one.
All right, I hinted at it earlier. I love the under 48.5 in this. FanDuel's got it sitting at 48.5. So if you want to grab an under, I'd say now. Taking the unders on short weeks is a great, great thing to do. And on top of that, over 3.5 receptions for Zach Ertz. Had 5 targets, 3 receptions in week 1. But on top of that, you saw Sam Laporta, Anthony mentioned it, 6 for 79 against this Green Bay defense. And if you really want to go back, I know it's last season, but it gives you at least a little bit of an idea. Green Bay gave up the 7th most receptions to tight ends last season. So I think there's an avenue there, especially with a pass rush, dumping things off. I'm not worried about yards as much as I am receptions and targets for somebody like Zach Ertz. All right, we are going to be back Thursday night after the Commanders play the Packers on Thursday Night Football. Anthony Armstrong, David Harrison, like, subscribe, do all the things you got to do here on all the platforms that you get this on. We're on all the social medias. I don't need to list them all. You know where they are. You have your preferences. You go do that. I'm Nick Ashooh. This is the Commander Squad Show.